St. John chapter 2. We're going to begin our reading at verse 12. After this, he went down to Capernaum. This was after the great miraculous work that he did, changing and turning the water to wine. He, his mother, his brothers, and his disciples. And they did not stay there many days. Now the Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. And he found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers doing business. When he had made a whip of cords, he drove them all out of the temple with the sheep and the oxen, and poured out the changers' money, and overturned the tables. And he said to those who sold doves, "Take these things away. Do not make my Father's house a house of merchandise." Then his disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for your house has eaten me up." So the Jews answered and said to him, "What sign do you show to us, since you do these things?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." Then the Jews said, "It's taken 46 years to build this temple, and he will raise it up in 3 days?" But he was speaking of the temple of his body. Therefore, when he had risen from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this to them, and they believed the scriptures and the word which Jesus had said. When he was in Jerusalem at the Passover during the feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs which he did. But Jesus did not commit himself to them, because he knew all men, and had no need that anyone should testify of men, for he knew what was in man. Verse 12 and 13 tells us that Jesus went down to Capernaum with his family, with his disciples, and they were there for a short time. And then in verse 14 it says, this is where I believe the crux of what the Lord wants me to share with you today is at. He found in the temple those who sold oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers doing business. Now he went up because of the Passover. Passover was the most important of the 7 feasts that they participated or practiced. Passover, of course, was symbolic of what had taken place when God delivered the children of Israel out of the hands of Pharaoh in a miraculous, powerful way. And of course, we also see the picture of Jesus there, where they took the blood and put it over the doorpost on the lintels, and the lamb was cooked and was eaten by those who were going to participate in this great deliverance. And of course, that was a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ and what he would do through his shed blood and through us eating of his flesh and drinking of his blood also. The people were merchandising the temple. All sorts of business were being carried out. The Passover had become an opportunity to profit. They were sitting around making it a place to profit. Now think about something this morning. This was customary. This was a major feast. Passover was important. But little by little, the impact of what was to be done and what was to be participated had eroded. It was necessary for them to bring sacrifice. And depending on your ability to purchase or to have a sacrifice, it could go from a lamb, it could go down to even a dove. Just something very simple and inexpensive for those who did not have much. So the poorest of the poor could provide a sacrifice by purchasing a dove. The merchants sold animals for sacrifice. Animals for sacrifice had to be perfect, without mark or spot on them. The temple employed officials. These officials examined the animals that people bought for sacrifices. But the officials were not fair and honest. They accepted only the animals that the people had bought from the temple. They rejected animals the people had bought from any place outside the temple. So this forced everyone to buy animals from the temple. But these animals cost much more than usual. They were very expensive, so that the merchants made big profits. Can you see the picture? Someone's coming to the temple, and they know that it's required to have a sacrifice, so when they get there, they can't bring their own sacrifice. This went from people bringing their own sacrifice, people being able to raise their own lambs, and even bring them for the purpose of sacrificing one, and bring their own as the sacrifice. It had eroded to the point, and the merchants had gotten so involved in this religiously, that when people came to the temple, they had to purchase an animal sold by the temple to be sacrificed on their behalf to be accepted by the Lord. Jesus knows all this. He sees all this. He sees the extortion. He sees the chicanery. He sees all that's taken place at the temple. This is the place where it was to be the house of the Lord. It was to be a holy place. It was to be a place of prayer. It was a place to all the nations could come. That the Gentiles and those who were outside of the house of faith could come and be proselytized and worship and praise the living God and pray to Him. But merchants had got involved. Religiosity had got involved. So when a visitor would come to the temple, and there was sacrifices made, they made sure that you had to buy from those merchants, and they were lining their pockets because they would raise the price of the sacrifice to where you could afford it, but you had to pay them much for their services. And it become a racket. I tell you, this is the part that no wonder the Lord said, I'm getting a little ahead, but no wonder the Bible tells us, and what I read to you, the zeal of the Lord had consumed him. Why? Because he saw what was happening. He saw what was happening to his house. He saw what was happening to the place that was to be a place of prayer. I remember several years ago, in reading some material, the house of the Lord was to be a place of prayer. It was to be a place of praise. It was to be a place of power. And they had lost all of this because they become more involved in merchandising what was going on than they did putting the emphasis on God. And let me just say this to the modern church. When you start putting the emphasis on anything other than Jesus Christ, the price of it changes. And people start merchandising for the benefit of lining their pockets